What's up, guys, and welcome to One Take. Tonight, we're talking about The Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 2, also known as Chapter 10, The Passenger. I'm Gil, and I'm here with my brother Adam.
Hey.
And my friend Dan.
Hello.
And my other friend in no particular order, Jeremy.
Hello there. Top billing. Happy to have that.
That's right. And I've been wanting to get you, both of you on for so long now because you're both big Star Wars fans, right?
Guilty.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I noticed the more negative I am, the more dislikes we get. So I figured I need to get a couple of Star Wars apologists on the episode.
Yep.
Is there a word for is there like the word Trekkie?
Right.
Is there like an equivalent for Star Wars people?
I don't
Star Wars fans.
Yeah, Star Wars
Jedi.
fans.
I don't know.
Yeah, Jedi. There you go.
Yeah, scruffy looking nerf herder. I guess.
So I'll start with just my overall thoughts and then pass it over to you guys before we jump into the detailed recap. So first thing I noticed in this episode is that weirdly it's sort of, or not the first thing I noticed, but throughout the episode it started to creep up on me that this was sort of a sequel to the Prison Break episode from last season, which if you listened to Jeremy and I talk about this episode last year, then you know I was not a fan of that episode. I think I opened up the video by saying this was my least favorite episode of television I've ever seen. And then Jeremy, you corrected me. You were like, it's not that bad.
Ever?
But I was exaggerating a little bit. But for me, this was definitely a much better episode than that one. I would say quality-wise, it was similar to how I felt about the season premiere, which was mixed. Some moments that I thought were great. But for me, the show is suffering from some storytelling issues. And I wanted to quote Matt Stone and Trey Parker, creators of South Park. They talked about how to tell a good story. And one of the things they said is that when you look at all the beats in your story, if you can use the words and then between any of those story beats, like one story beat goes to another and there's no real connective tissue between them, that's a problem. It should always be but or therefore. And for me, a lot of times when I'm watching this show, it kind of feels like random things happening. Like he walks into the bar and it just so happens that the giant ant knows where to find other Mandalorians. Or they land on the planet, but damn it, they crash through the ice and now they're surrounded by space spiders. So I get a little bit of that feeling, which takes me out of the story.
You just said but there, by the way, when you're doing that.
Damn it.
And this whole thing is breaking down.
No, but and therefore are good. But like I was going to say, sometimes and often the visuals and music are so good that it's able to overcome what I see as storytelling flaws. And it's able to suck me into the action and adventure that happened during the climax of last week's episode. It happened during the climax of this episode. I will say one other stray thought is that I find myself really wanting to see another great supporting character like the Ugnaught. The Ugnaught was so good last season, and I feel like we haven't gotten to that level of greatness again. Yeah. But to wrap up my thoughts on it, like I said, mixed, some stuff I really liked, and overall still not loving the storytelling, but enjoying it enough. How about you, Adam? What did you think?
Yeah, I agree with that pretty strongly. You use the Matt Stone and Trey Parker explanation. For me, as I was watching it, it felt like The Hobbit, but the movies, which is not a compliment because again, it's just like one thing happened. You like tumble from one situation into another, and unlike The Hobbit, I don't actually know what the purpose is or where it's going.
Right. What about you, Dan? What did you think of the episode?
Yeah, I definitely agree with some of your criticisms about the storytelling flaws here. This episode definitely, I think, felt like a little bit more of a filler, and we've been talking about this sort of distinction in The Mandalorian both seasons so far now about, the more serialized episodes and then the kind of one-off standalone adventures. And last season, I was definitely I think I sort of fell into the trap of, well, TV, prestige TV nowadays is all serialized, and I got invested in the Baby Yoda story, the child story more, and the Empire and all that. And then the minute we had, 3 standalone episodes in the middle of the season, I sort of felt like, wait, what happened to the show? It sort of hit the pause button. But I think in rewatching it, I kind of, it didn't bother me as much, the second time through. And I kind of appreciated that it's different that way. It is different than other shows, and that's sort of the point. It's not really trying to be, like a Game of Thrones or a Better Call Saul, where every every scene is sort of in service of this much bigger kind of plot. But I definitely agree though that this episode was a little random and had some flaws for sure, had some holes. I did not like it as much as I liked the first episode of this season last week, which I did really like. I thought that was a great way to open a season, really. Right. So yeah, I also agree. I miss the supporting cast this time around. There's definitely not a Peli Motto or Amy Sedaris' character is not quite at that level of the Ugnaught for me quite yet. But
Jeremy, what about you? What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with some of what you guys are saying. I'll be a little, I don't know, I'll try to play the anti-cynic role a little bit more. I mean, I agree with what Dan was getting at there. The show definitely last season set up a kind of, monster of the week trope type vibe where, and this week it's this thing, and this week it's the Jawas with the egg, with the horn thing. So there's definitely parts of that. I think the one thing that I would mostly agree with is it was a little too unbelievable for me that the person in the cantina had a lead on the Mandalorians when a Mandalorian didn't have a lead on the Mandalorians. That seems a little outlandish. But I mean, I don't mind the adventure stuff as much, especially because like near the end of this episode, they were getting into these moments where I was like, man, how are they going to get this right back to where it's just everything's normal at the end of this? Like the ship is crazy destroyed. The spiders were everywhere. When he was running away from them, I found myself thinking, man, is he just going to get out of this cleanly? I'm going to be pretty frustrated if he just goes back and is like, oh, the ship works now. Guess we could have done that the whole time. But as they got like further and further in and there was webs everywhere, I was kind of like, I was okay with it. I will say that it is a bummer to have not been on last week because I definitely liked last week's way more than this week's. Right. And I'm not sure I would have felt as down after 2 if I wasn't so hyped up after 1. You can only get so many, I guess, oh man, Boba Fett moments.
Right. I think when we get to the end of this review, I'd like to get some of your thoughts on the first episode since you weren't able to be on our review last week. But jumping into the recap of the episode, we pick up right where episode 1 left off with Mando speeding away on his speeder bike. And some bounty hunters want to take him out. He still has that precious Baby Yoda cargo, plus the armor. So they set up that rope that knocks him off his bike, and then a fight ensues. And this was one of those moments I really enjoyed. Anytime we get to see the Mandalorian just being badass and being ruthless, being competent, I love those moments. And he takes out everybody except for that one little guy who holds a knife to Baby Yoda. And that's a death sentence. So they set up a trade where the Mandalorian gives up his jetpack. Then as the guy scurries off, he sets off his jetpack and drops the guy from the sky, which I thought was awesome. Anybody else feel like this was, for me, this was my favorite part of the episode. I just loved that moment.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it was a good, I think they do a good job of these sort of cold opens where there's like an action sequence, and this sort of had a little bit of the same kind of feel to the second episode or third episode last season, one of them where he fights off the those 2 like Trandoshan bounty hunters, I want to say, the Bosk guys. So like sort of a similar kind of vibe of like, okay, more hunters are coming after Baby Yoda, he's got to fight them off, and it's just like a kind of a quick and dirty action sequence to kick off the episode in an exciting way. So,
I also love anytime you see him just take a bullet to the head with his helmet. I think we got it last week too. Every time I see that, I'm like, yes, awesome. But now he doesn't have a bike. So we get a classic Western style walk through the desert where he's carrying all the armor and everything on his back. The music kicks in. Another awesome moment. Then he finds Peli Motto, who is Amy Sedaris' character, at the cantina. And correct me if I'm wrong, that is the cantina from A New Hope. Is that right?
I think that there's only one.
The only one that's
Tatooine? I mean, there's probably several in Mos Eisley,
it's
but
not a chain.
Of all the cantinas in all the world, right?
I did see a thing, somebody tweeted like a screen cap on the in the end credits with all the concept art stuff. The scene with her playing cards, she did have like a blaster mark behind her head, which nice. Maybe is the Greedo.
One. It didn't really look like the same booth, but I thought that actually last season they were sitting in the same booth.
I think they were last season for
like
sure.
That weird young bounty hunter dude.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm not sure. I don't know. Every canteen is the same.
just to rewind back just a second to that the Western, the sort of like classic Western walking through the desert sequence. I think the new kind of guard of the Disney era, I guess, of Star Wars, they really love these sequences. This is now like the third time, right? In Force Awakens, Finn did the same thing, and then after season 1, episode 2, after he kind of first captures, I guess, Baby Yoda, same kind of thing. So I think they're establishing a pattern here of the kind of Western style, Lawrence of Arabia, the long kind of trek through the desert, very much like Bagman, perhaps.
There you go. The second Better Call Saul reference. And by the way, if you recognize Dan's voice, it's because you heard him on the Better Call Saul watch party a few months back. But importantly, in this scene, Peli Motto is talking to Dr. Mandible, which she calls him, I guess, as a joke, but in the credits, or at least in the closed caption, he's listed as Dr. Mandible. So that's what I'm going to call him. Basically a giant ant who happens to have knowledge of the whereabouts of some Mandalorian, one of their coverts. But the hitch is that in order for him to tell Mando where it is, he needs to provide passage for a frog to an estuary moon called Trask. And that's
you did such a good job of saying that with a straight face. I have to give you credit.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, and I complained about this last week, so I don't want to hit on it too hard. But every once in a while, well, very frequently actually, this show has what I call the Rick and Morty effect, where that show has kind of ruined hard sci-fi for me in certain ways. Because when you hear characters say things like, "You just got to bring him to the estuary moon on Trask. I hear there's a Mandalorian covert there." It's like one too many sci-fi words in one sentence, and sometimes I buy it, and sometimes I feel like I'm watching a cartoon. And for some reason, with Peli's character, it happens more often than not. So when I saw her at the bar, I was like, "All right, here we go."
She's very cartoony. That's like her shtick. I don't know. I think it's kind of it's a little weird in that it doesn't feel like it feels out of place. But that's another thing I do kind of appreciate too about this show is that it kind of dares to be different. It kind of it cuts outside the mold of like. Star Wars has always been kind of lighthearted and fun, and there's all the humor with like the droids, and you sort of have your obligatory like cute stuff. Like I guess Baby Yoda is definitely that in this, but I don't know. It's in a way I don't really mind her kind of hunky dory, lighthearted attitude, unless it's weird.
Her tone is just so different. Like when she's doing this stuff. What am I, a Rhodian? Like it's like okay, we get it. But I mean, I love Amy Sedaris.
Right.
She's great, and the character. Like I guess it is true to the character that she is playing. That she is that corny and over the top, and like someone's like annoying aunt or something. I guess is the vibe I get. Aunt with a U, not Dr. Mandible. But,
Aunt and aunt.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
I think she is playing the role as it is written and as it is meant to be played. And I'll move on from her character in a second. But it's just
roast Peli Motto this whole show.
Well, when she basically says, "Here's the deal: you need to take this frog to this distant moon in order to find the Mandalorians." She, "It's what you wanted, isn't it? Quit your crying. You're going to start rusting out your armor." And like, what is she talking about? It's like, but okay, so they make the deal. She brings him back to her place where they're roasting some of the dragon meat using, I believe, a pod racer engine.
Oh, I didn't pick up on that.
I think that's right. A lot of used pod racer parts this season so far.
Right, because Timothy Oliphant's bike last week was also souped up with pod racer parts.
Right.
I miss pod racing. That's one of the things I most remember from the prequels that came out when we were kids. So for me, Star Wars nostalgia is like pod racing, but it seems like the sport is defunct in the current Star Wars universe.
Well, it's dangerous, right? Very fast, very dangerous, as Qui-Gon says.
That's true. That's true. But people are slaughtering each other left and right in this show anyway, so might as well make a sport out of it.
I think we'll get some pod racing sooner or later. I think that they've got too much to mine. I think that they will give us that at some point.
As much as
Tatooine.
Right, exactly. As much as I rail against the episodic nature of the show sometimes, if there was the pod racing episode where it was like, Mandalorian, I know where to find Boba Fett, but for me to give you that information, you must defeat me in the upcoming pod racing tournament. I would
it's
be
basically
very
just a giant obstacle course at this point, this whole season.
And there's some other pod racer who, for no obvious reason, has a grudge against him and sabotages his machine.
That's right. So, no Mando, you think you have what it takes to be a pod racer?
Anyway, those announcer guys could be alive still.
Foden Bede, Greg Proops.
Bring him back.
They should. That would make me so happy. But so Mandalorian meets the frog. He brings her onto the ship, and they can't use hyperspeed because it's not safe for her eggs, which she's carrying in this sort of mini aquarium. Looks very cool. Baby Yoda keeps sneaking his hand in there and eating them, which at first I thought he's slaughtering her spawn, her children. But Adam, you picked up on an important detail.
They're unfertilized.
That's right. So
apparently she just lays them like crazy, so it doesn't matter.
I thought that this show could go the way of Akira, for example, the anime movie, where you have this child who is super powerful and becomes a danger, like in the movie Looper as well. I thought maybe they were going that way with Baby Yoda. He's going to turn out to be evil, and I thought he's eating this poor woman's children. They're going that way. Turns out they're not. So
he's just hungry.
He's just hungry.
Not be a wise merchandising move on their part.
That would surprise me. That would surprise me. But I guess you never know.
Anyway, they're taking off. Mandalorian decides he's going to take a nap, but then he wakes up to some alarms, and it turns out they are surrounded on either side by a couple of X-Wings, one of whom is Trapper Wolf, played by David Filoni, who we saw in the prison episode. He was in one of the X-Wings that showed up at the end and blew up the bad guys. Anyway, they ask him to set off his transponder beacon. Basically, he can't respond to them. I forgot he's kind of a fugitive after freeing that prisoner. He tries to get away with everything. He says, yeah, I'll make sure I fix my beacon. And then they insist they need to see his papers. They need to take him in, check out who he is. So he tries to take off. We get into an intergalactic car chase. He flies onto a snowy planet, skids on some ice, and hides from them. Which, first off, awesome to see a couple of X-Wings. And once again, you get reminded of how incredible this show looks as they fly through the clouds. Also, is this the first time we hear them on this show say, "May the Force be with you"?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was cool.
It's definitely interesting in that Mando says it and yet seems to have no idea what's happening every time the child uses the Force to save his life.
That was my first reaction to that too, because I don't think we'd heard it before, and not only not heard it before, but like you're saying, like zero awareness of the Force as a thing.
Right.
It's like when you say Gesundheit, you don't actually know what it means. You just know when you're supposed to say it.
Yeah, he's clearly saying it to try. I mean, he's basically getting pulled over here, right? Yeah. Like, and sort of getting like harassed by these like two cops in an X-Wings.
Which was interesting because we're trained to see X-Wings as part of the rebellion. Those are the good guys. But here, when they say we're from the New Republic, it almost felt like we're seeing them as antagonistic. It felt a little bit empire-y, the way they basically pulled them over and they're like, let me see where you're from. Let me see your papers.
I think that's a good point. And I think that is a strength, I would say, of the storytelling of the show, that 10 episodes in now, in that they've sort of been able to carve out a kind of interesting like anti-hero, kind of space for Mando and his friends and his allies, where they're not on either side of the kind of classic, Republic, Empire, Jedi, Sith kind of dichotomy of the, galactic factions, but they're sort of somewhere in the middle. And I think that is what I think sets the show apart from the films, is that it's about the regular folks.
Right.
He's just a simple man trying to make his way in the universe.
Yeah. And we're seeing those dark corners of Star Wars that we didn't get to see in the movies.
Yeah.
But they hide out on this planet, and then they crash through the ice, and Mandalorian gets knocked out. When he wakes up, he sees that his passenger, the frog, she's sitting there freezing. So he goes to check on the eggs, get her some blankets. He finds Yoda eating some more of them. And the ship isn't working, so they're basically trapped there. Mandalorian decides to take a nap, and I guess... So I wasn't clear here what his plan was, because he basically just wants to go to sleep. And I guess wait to die until the frog insists. She tries talking to him. He can't speak her language. But eventually she spots the broken droid from the prison episode, Zero, and hacks into its vocabulator. And she's finally able to talk to Mando, which I thought that was very clever. I thought that was a clever way to overcome the language barrier. And she basically uses it to tell the Mandalorian, I need you to take me to Trask. That is the only place that's hospitable for me and my family. My husband and I have worked way too hard to find this place for my family. We had a deal, and I heard that the Mandalorians keep their word. And anytime you call into question the Mandalorians' Mandalorianness, that's how you get him to do what you want him to do. So
sure, she found his soft spot.
That's right.
It's like using the word chicken around Marty McFly.
Yeah, exactly. So he gives in and he decides to repair the ship. And I won't harp on it too much, but this was another moment where I thought, what was the plan here? His plan was to lay down and die, and he needs to be convinced to repair the ship. And if he had the capability to repair the ship, why did the frog need to talk him into it?
Well, I
totally agree with that.
So I know I have a SpongeBob reference for everything, but in this case, I think at this point, he's used to just being bounced from one situation to another without much action required on his part. So maybe he just figured, if I just sit here and do nothing, eventually something will happen.
It's kind of what it felt like.
Yeah.
He basically said something to the effect of like, and when it gets dark, it's probably going to get pretty cold. So anyway, we'll reassess at that point. I was like, wait, why aren't you doing something now? Like, what are you going to do then that's different than what you do now?
Fine, I'll repair the ship.
He only operates well under pressure. He's a real procrastinator.
Yeah, I agree with you, Gil. I thought that the passenger using the sort of hacking into the droid for communication I think that was my favorite part of the episode, actually, because I thought that was like, there's certain like small moments, like sort of surprising storytelling kind of choices like that you don't usually see in a Star Wars movie or TV show, that it sort of weirdly reminded me of in Force Awakens when Rey like makes the bread, she like stirs the bread and it rises. Just like little things that you're like, okay, this is like part of this universe that I didn't know about, but that okay, this passenger knows how to rewire this droid and communicate. And it's sort of just like a nice subtle way of deepening the world building a little bit.
It also avoids one of the issues you get from the episodic nature of a TV show, where you introduce a device in one episode, then you get to another and you say they run into some issue and you think, well, if you take the thing from the last episode, you could use that, but they're so standalone that they basically ignore previous events. Here, at least you still have that connectivity. And I thought it was cool that they brought back the droid, and it would still be on the ship. They have the technology there. So that was a cool use of it. And by the way, in the chat, we have the Lowdown Show. Hello, and welcome to the chat. Let us know if you have any thoughts on the episode you want to shout out. But anyway, as the Mandalorian is repairing the ship, he finds that the passenger has wandered off. So Baby Yoda and him follow her footsteps. He uses that pretty cool scanner in his helmet to see her footsteps. And they find her in a cave, warming up in a hot spring with her eggs. You also can look around the cave and see upright eggs, which is never a good sign. Reminded me of the movie Alien or the movie Godzilla with Matthew Broderick.
Both pinnacles of cinema.
Exactly.
Again, this is going to be where I interject and just comment on how many times we've seen eggs so far in The Mandalorian, whether it's like Suga or just two different kind of species of eggs in this. And then last week there was that like egg in the Krayt Dragon at the Tusken Raiders, the pearl, right? It's kind of interesting, like again, like sort of like layers of world building that usually the films don't have as much time for, but with TV we can say like, yeah, of course, like Jawas love these eggs. That's just a part of their culture. So I thought it's weird. I think it's unusual and unexpected because we, like you're saying, we never see, characters in the Star Wars universe use the bathroom or, talk about their husbands, but like, it's sort of, it's just kind of, it's cool seeing that depth. I think.
I'm sorry, Dan, did you say, you mean privy?
That's true. They did say privy this week, but in season 1, right? It was the vac tube.
The vac tube. That's right.
Yeah.
Those are the little details you get from Mandalorian you don't get from The Force Awakens. And that's what that movie was missing, was bathrooms. And by the way, in the chat, we have Gilgamesh who says, this is the way. This is the way. I have spoken.
Was
and
that
Anthony
you, Gil?
Scott,
was that just you commenting?
That's me, yeah, under my alias, Gilgamesh.
Not a great alias. You will be found out pretty quickly with that.
Anyway, this was a moment when the passenger wandered off into this cave to basically take a bath. That was one of the moments where I kind of rolled my eyes and said, Why would she do that? Now, to be more charitable, looking back at it, I think she was getting worried about the temperature of the eggs. It was freezing. It wasn't healthy. So she wanted to bring them to this warm hot spring, which still felt a little bit odd to me because she wandered off without telling anybody. And did she know she was going to find a hot spring? What was she looking for? So I didn't love that. I feel like this episode dipped a little bit into the horror genre. Once the spiders show up, it felt like a horror movie, but it also brought this horror trope of bad things are happening to the characters, and the plot progression is happening because they're making poor choices. Like, we're on a mysterious planet. I know it's a dangerous place. I'm going to wander off and not tell anybody.
Let's go right into that cave, just
and take a bath.
Right. Exactly. Right.
But that's okay. So while they're in the bath, or while she's taking a bath, Mando starts scooping up the eggs and telling her, "Hey, we got to get back to safety." But Baby Yoda, he needs to get a leash for Baby Yoda because he wanders off.
Seriously,
goes up to one of these eggs and rips it open and eats a spider from inside it. But then we get to the climax of the episode because
I think he just needs to be fed more. To be honest,
that's true. He seems to be very hungry.
Maybe that's why he develops. Maybe that's why he develops so slowly.
Right, he's stunted.
Yeah, he's malnourished.
He doesn't have anything to eat.
Yeah.
But he eats a spider, and then all the other eggs start to hatch. And at first, I know, Jeremy, you were watching this and saying, "Big deal. It's a bunch of little spiders." But then, like they said in Phantom Menace, there's always a bigger fish. Or in this case, a bigger spider, and some medium-sized spiders show up. But then a very, very large spider shows up, and then they got to get out of there. So they start running. The frog starts sort of doing a frog jump leap thing, which I thought was pretty awesome.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, this was where, so I've complained a little bit about how we get from one story beat to another, but usually, I don't always love how we get there, but once we're there, I'm in it. And basically the last 15 minutes of this episode, I thought were pretty excellent. I won't go through it beat by beat, but we get some great action, blasting away spiders with the laser blaster. Great use of the flamethrowers. Even the sound design, once the spiders get onto the ship, the little clicking sound of their, whatever you want to call them, their spider feet walking around. And I definitely felt the claustrophobia when they're starting to cram their way through the door. You're trying to close the door on them, and it needs to flame throw them to be able to close the door. So I thought all that stuff was great. What did you guys think of this whole final spider sequence, Dan?
Yeah, I agree. I thought it ended the episode on certainly an exciting note. They looked great. I got a kind of like a Shelob's Lair kind of vibe from this whole sequence. I saw online that the designs for the spider were repurposed from some like Ralph McQuarrie concept art for Dagobah from Empire Strikes Back, which I thought was kind of cool. I think they've done that a few times on the show so far. So like a lot of respect and a lot of like homage to I love how much concept art actually plays a role in the storytelling of this show just in general. But yeah, I thought it was cool. I guess I thought it was cool. I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
I felt like there was a but at the end of that sentence.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about that. Pass.
We'll come back to you. Jeremy, what did you think?
Yeah, I think this was the moment. I agree with you. The sequence was really cool and really well done. This was the moment for me where we got, again, literally into like the monster of the week thing. Like, oh, here's a big giant thing here. Like next week, maybe it'll be a big giant, slug or something, which is totally fine in Star Wars. And I like all that stuff, and it's great to sign up for it. And I want to see new creatures, especially if they're based off of, old concept art. I think that's really cool. But I don't know. Yeah, it was a little bit like insert monster trepidation thing here, but it was cool. It was well done. I liked it. It was good action sequence, flamethrowers, blasters, frogs jumping around. The other frog thing that I thought was really cool was when she's in the bath, she uses her tongue to grab the clothes, which was another really cool thing. So no, it was good. It was great. It was good action.
Yeah.
I think one thing that might help me get over this whole side quest feel to every episode or monster of the week feel is if we just I want a moment of the Mandalorian just getting frustrated with this and being like, come on already. I just want to get to where I'm trying to go. Like express some frustration that he can literally never just do one simple task. It always gets interrupted.
He just wants to take a nap this whole episode and he can't do it. And by the way, the Lowdown show in the chat says Baby Yoda eats frogs, which if you remember last season, he did eat a frog. So it would make sense that he would so love eating those eggs.
It's a good call.
So
it is still gross, though.
It is totally definitely still gross.
I did keep, I don't know, whatever. Anyway.
Anyway, it looks like all hope is lost because they finally get into the ship. They kill all the little spiders, or a bunch of them. But then the giant spider that he thought he blew up is not dead. It comes back, starts stabbing into the ship. But then laser blasters from some unknown source start taking out spiders. Who is saving them? The X-Wings have returned.
The Deus X-Wing Machina.
Nice.
Mando goes out to face the wrath of the X-Wings. They read him his rap sheet, tell him everything he did. But then they said, you know what? You put yourself in harm's way to save Lieutenant Davin. So we're going to let you go. Now,
that was a meaningful one.
Yeah. Did anybody else have to Google Lieutenant Davin?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I wanted to make sure I wasn't the only one.
I remembered that he helped someone.
Yeah, I did sort of infer that it was that it was like the guy in the ship, but it definitely wasn't super clear.
Yeah, and so for anybody who needs a refresher, Lieutenant Davin was basically the prison guard on the ship.
Unnamed prison guard.
That's right.
Guy's name we've never heard before.
Lieutenant Davin. We will never forget him now. And the Lowdown show says, but he died, which is true.
He's dead.
He attempted to save him, and I guess word got around. So the two X-Wing pilots decide to let him go. And again, there was a great moment where the X-Wings fly off as triumphant music. And anytime I start to just if I think too much about the plot of this show, then the music kicks in and the visuals kick in, and it pulls me right back in.
Yeah, I think like it's a little bit ridiculous and simplistic that they would just let him go like that, no processing or no formal legal process. But at the same time, I do like that it's at least a payoff to his actions from that previous episode. So he gets a reward for trying to do the right thing before.
That's right. And Anthony Scott reminds us in the chat that Lieutenant Davin was the dude with the nice shoes. So I remember Bill Burr said that. I remember, Jeremy, I think you and I really liked that insult. Nice shoes you got there.
Forgot about that. Yeah.
Anthony also says, I think it will be interesting to see if the episodes this season are more consecutive than last season where they had to introduce more. So far, it seems like we've had the first two episodes have been pretty standalone, which was especially surprising for the premiere. I would have expected that. I mean, it had a pretty... what I assume is going to be an important moment where Boba Fett shows up at the end. Not confirmed as Boba Fett, but I think we're all pretty sure it is Boba Fett.
Isn't it? I thought it was.
I mean, it's the guy. It's the actor.
It's the
right?
actor.
It's
Tamura Morrison. Him. Yeah, I mean, technically, people. I was looking online. People were saying it could be another clone, but it's Boba Fett. Yeah.
Okay, I guess I hadn't considered that. It could be another.
He looked
clone.
pretty beat up.
The other clones, though, they were aged rapidly, right? So by now they would be old. He is the only one. He was a child, so he would have grown naturally. So by now, he would be the age that the clones were in Attack of the Clones. Plus, he was all scarred up, presumably from the Sarlacc pit.
Yeah, he got digested over 1,000 years. Somehow escaped.
Yeah, there you go.
Dengar.
Oh, so what are you guys referencing here? Dengar?
Dengar's another one of the bounty hunters. Yeah, what about Dengar?
I believe Dengar is the one that before the expanded universe was like wiped away. He eventually helped Boba Fett.
He's the one who saves him. Right.
Yes.
Do you remember, anyone seen the Parks and Rec episode with Patton Oswalt doing the filibuster when he talks about this?
How Boba Fett
escapes.
Yeah.
That's what I thought of as soon as I saw that.
Wait, so let me see if I can parse out what you guys are talking about. But you're saying in the expanded universe of Star Wars, before the slate got wiped clean when Disney bought everything, if you read the books, then you would have found out that Boba Fett was being slowly digested by the Sarlacc pit for 1,000 years.
I mean, that's what was supposed to, like in Return of the Jedi, that's the stakes, right? Like if you get eaten by the Sarlacc, it's a slow 1,000-year painful death. Boba Fett falls in, and then I think in one of the novels after the fact, it's revealed that he somehow escaped. He crawled out or fought his way out. I didn't remember the Dengar thing. That's a good call.
It's the the power of fan service brought him back in the novels, and I guess here too, honestly. But.
Yeah.
This is great. I'm glad you guys injected that because it's just upping the Star Wars cred of our channel.
Yeah, man, Dengar's a good call. That's the guy with the bandage on his head, right?
I think so, yeah.
The bounty hunter with
So anyway, the Mandalorian, they let him go. He repairs his ship just enough to limp out of there. And if anybody watched the trailer, then we saw a shot of the Razor Crest barely flying along. We get that shot here after he leaves the planet. And then
I think that shot is actually, the trailer shot is sort of what comes after this, is what I... Maybe
so that you're saying what's going to come in the following episode.
Yeah, I think that trailer shot will be like the first shot of the next episode.
Got it.
So limping to the next place.
So when I say no spoilers from any future episodes, caveat,
true, my bad.
minor spoiler.
Minor spoiler, opening shot alert.
They fly away, and for the third time this episode, Mando decides to take a nap. And Baby Yoda eats one more of this poor frog's eggs. And that's where the episode wraps up. So what did we think of the episode? I mean, I guess we kind of gave our overall thoughts earlier, but I think we all felt like a solid episode. You both liked this episode not as much as the first one. But since you weren't on last week, Jeremy, I did want to get your more detailed thoughts. So you were a big fan of episode 1 this season?
I was, yeah. I just liked, I mean, I guess everything about it, really. They did so many things the right way, like from the Marshal showing up in the Boba Fett armor, and I think everyone was supposed to be like, "What the heck is going?" Like, this guy looks like somebody at a Comic-Con because it doesn't really fit him. Like, it was great. Like, the way they did all that stuff was great. And when you go back and you hear him say that it's where the Sarlacc pit was, your mind starts going like, "Well, wait a minute. Does that mean that that we could? Is Boba Fett going to be like?" It was designed perfectly. I also really liked the way that they set up the background of the what's the town? Mos Pelgo. Mos Pelgo, right? Yeah. The mining town, and they give the background of like after the second Death Star blew up, like, and all. It was just really cool. It felt like exactly what I want the Mandalorian to be, which is this like side story, but is so connected to the larger Star Wars elements, and it feels like really like that story just felt so gritty and real, and a thing that would be happening if Star Wars, were reality, and I don't know, it was really cool. Timothy Olyphant was great, and everything was good. I liked it a lot.
Right. And before actually we leave episode 2, anything you wanted to bring up about episode 2 or mention that we didn't get to in the review? No,
I don't think so. No, I think we covered all the extra stuff that I had. Too much. I don't need Baby Yoda eating the eggs. I thought it was weird. I thought he was going to do something when he first touches it. Like, I thought there was going to be like he was going to hatch all of them or something with the Force.
I was expecting
to turn into Yoda eggs.
Right. I was so expecting at the end of the episode for it to turn out that he wasn't eating the eggs, but he was warming them up in his belly because he knew that. I was expecting something to happen at the end, but
I could have seen him like regurgitating them at the end back into the thing.
Maybe
he was keeping them safe.
Going off that, maybe next episode opens with a bunch of frogs jumping out of his throat.
Or it opens with him just spending a long time at the privy. Who knows?
Wow.
Yeah, I guess we could still get a payoff on that because they are still there. This episode does seem like it'll tie in way more directly. 3 seems like it'll tie in more directly to 2 just because he's still on the ship. It's still really banged up. The frog person is still there. The eggs are still there. Like, there's a lot more things that they have to fix.
This mission, is still unfinished. Whereas episode 1, like episode 4 last season, like episode 5 to some extent, and 6 were all kind of like beginning, middle, and end, case closed.
Here's my prediction for the next episode. All right, we got to make a pit stop on this planet to get this ship repaired. I don't have any money. All right, well, if you want me to repair this ship, you're going to have to complete this quest for me, and we'll get the setup for next episode.
It is a lot of side quests, I will say.
Oh, one more thing about the eggs. We did see a little bit of force action, didn't we? Because when Baby Yoda approached when he was staring at it, they all kind of started to come closer to him.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, okay. I didn't pick up on that.
I think there's something to this. He's a Baby Yoda, and we keep seeing eggs. He has some kind of fascination or attraction to like new life, things like that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's a good call. I don't think it's supposed to just be like cute sideshow action. I do think that there is something to that, and whether it's that species or something about it. You're right. There's too much there's been too many plot points already spent on Baby Yoda and eggs and his curiosity to just have it be distraction. So
Yeah.
By the way, the frog lady, a couple folks here in the chat are questioning whether or not we can trust her. When we get to her planet, do you think there's a possibility that she turns on him and she just used him to get there and then turns on him? Twist.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
right.
for sure. I don't think that. I mean, I guess they do have some side characters that don't have. There's not more to it than that in the first season. But yeah, I don't see that as being that.
You should have some trepidations about her. Does that work?
I think that is the perfect note to end on, unless anybody else has any thoughts and or puns they want to get in there. I feel like Dan's trying to think of a pun.
No, yeah, I think Jeremy has spoken.
All right, perfect. Well, we'll wrap it up there. So if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the bell icon so you get notified the next time we do a video or the next time we go live. And our goal is to review every episode of The Mandalorian live every Friday. And if you want to be part of the chat, be part of the conversation, like Anthony Scott, like The Lowdown Show, or Gilgamesh, who may or may not be me in disguise, if you want to be like any of these amazing, fine people, then all you have to do is hit that subscribe button. And preferably the bell icon so you get notified. Anyway, with that, thanks for watching and see you on the next One Take.